Congressman, we're thrilled that you're with us today. And I just really want to go to what I hear from Democrats and Republicans. When do we see the resignations? Is the GOP on Capitol Hill demanding resignations to suggest to the president that this is unacceptable?
Well, good morning, Tom. Thanks for having me. I think that Republicans on the Hill were deeply disappointed by the president's press conference with President Putin, because together the executive branch and the legislative branch have put absolutely the toughest sanctions on Russia for their behavior in the Ukraine and the Crimea. We've put a lot of pressure on Russia from sanctions because of their coddling of Assad in Syria. We've increased the military budget. We've increased our commitment to NATO. And so it's frustrating to us when we see this kind of mixed message that was sent in Helsinki.
Good morning, Representative Hill. It's Naira in London. Are you disappointed in the president's walking back and his general handling of what happened in Helsinki with President Putin?
No, I'm glad he walked it back. I'm glad he attempted to clarify it. I'm glad he instituted his confidence publicly in the fine work done by American intelligence officials who are doing the best they can with the information they have to provide us as policymakers the information that we need. So I was pleased he made the effort to clarify his position and, as you say, walk it back.
French Hill, you won your district with, I believe, a 55% vote a few years ago. Is this uproar with the word today of confusion, is this going to affect the marginal voters in your Arkansas district? And nationwide, does this threaten the Republican majority in the House to see this diplomacy confusion?
Well, look, my concern, I think, right now between the executive branch and the legislative branch and how it relates to politics is where we're going on trade, Tom. I think that trade is a double-edged sword. On one hand, voters in Arkansas are proud that the president is pushing back on prohibitive tariffs in other countries against American goods and services, non-tariff barriers that we see particularly in China, subsidized dumping of steel and aluminum, and they appreciate that. But on the other hand, how are we coordinating that effort between the House and the Senate and the executive branch? When we work on tax reform, when we work on CFIUS reform between the executive and the legislative branch, we're at our best. And I feel that we're uncoordinated between the legislative branch and the executive branch on trade and trade policy, and that's accounting for what could be some disgruntlement among investors, particularly in ag country, this fall.
I mean, you've got a most interesting district. If you look at Dillard's, if you look at the Bentonville effect as well, if you look at the Little Rock Air Force Base, what do you see on tariffs right now within your district? I'm sure the phone's lighting up. What are you hearing from your set of interesting constituents?
Right, great. And thanks. I really appreciate you looking at our district specifically. Let's talk about steel and aluminum first. We have a lot of intermediate good producers in central Arkansas. Well, they're hurt by the steel and aluminum tariffs. I don't agree with the Section 232 use here. And I'll just give an example. Steel belted radial tires, something President Obama and President Bush knew a lot about. We make the steel belts in the 2nd Congressional District. That steel rod that's threaded into the steel belts is imported. It's not made in the United States. And so that puts immediately these manufacturers at a terrible disadvantage.
Naira, this is important. We're speaking with French Hill, mechanical engineer from Vanderbilt this morning on the technology of tires. Naira, save us here from our engineering lesson.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll move it from engineering to agriculture. Is it fair, Representative Hill, that the agriculture industry might suffer because of the actions and the threats taken on trade by President Trump?
Yeah, the people are nervous in ag country, as I note. Soybean prices at $8.35 or so are down about 13% this year. They're about at a 10-year low. And they come at a time where farm incomes are down anyway. So, again, farmers, ranchers are excited that President Trump is pushing back to try to improve market access in Asia and in Europe. But they're nervous at where we are in the cycle. And I'm hearing from farmers at home in Arkansas, we appreciate the pushback, but we hope we get a result soon.
We're expecting President Trump to meet Jean-Claude Juncker of the EU next week, and also expecting that what will be discussed is car tariffs. Bloomberg reporting that the EU is preparing some retaliation on car tariffs ahead of those talks. How should the president respond to that?
I would hope the president would take this great opportunity to come together and make some intermediate deal with the EU, particularly on cars. I think the president could declare that that's a big improvement in American trade. It's a major supply chain between the two countries. It's very important to keep it on a good track, and then use that opening to get the EU and the U.S. working together to improve the mercantilistic trade policies over in China. Together, we're a third of two-way trade with China. We are stronger together than negotiating with China.